Welcome back to the Stan Simpson Show. So, what can Connecticut expect now with a charter school champion as its new commissioner? We're joined here by a bevy of charter school or education reform activists. I won't bother to state their names again because we have a little bit of time left. The unions, all right, big element here. Charter schools, the feeling is the unions aren't crazy about charter schools because they're longer school days, there are more latitude for the administrators. How does the new commissioner, Stephen Pryor, work with the unions in having them play ball?
You know, I know that you're looking at this from the standpoint of a guy with a charter school background as commissioner, and that is, I think, clearly a part of this story. But again, I just look at his background and say, really, this is a guy who has built bridges across, passionate issues. And those of us who worked, on advocacy in the legislature, the passion runs high, and sometimes that gets in the way of achieving results. Other times, it's absolutely essential for getting results. So, I think everybody wants to see leadership here. I can't speak for the unions and labor leaders, but look, I think everyone needs an effective leader here, and he has an opportunity to reach out. I think, folks, you look at how it's played already. I mean, people are saying, let's sit down, let's talk, and let's figure out what's possible.
But talk is cheap sometimes, right? And when we're formed, you have accountability, and that becomes a very dicey issue when it comes to accountability on teachers' jobs, on performance. You've got to be able to work with people who are teaching, saying, listen, if certain things aren't happening, we need to get you out of there. That causes some great problems. In getting more parents involved, that causes great problems. So resources, accountability, that's when it gets a little more dynamic in, okay, how far are we going with the accountability? How am I protected that I'm not being misused in my teaching and I'm being graded correctly? So how does he work that dynamic? How do you get them involved where they feel empowered to do the right things and not feel, and put it kid-centered, not staff-centered?
Well, I actually think, and you guys cut me off here, but I think that in order to get adults focused on kids, you actually have to acknowledge adult interests in the process. Because, and I was struck by this in the Hartford School Change effort, actually, that, when you talk about a 30,000 level, 30,000 foot reform to parents, they have to understand what it means for their child before they want to talk about anything else. Absolutely. And I think it's the same with educators and anyone. If you're going to talk about changing things, people have to know what it means for themselves, even when you're asking them to focus their efforts more intensely on the students in front of them. So I think that's just a reality of human nature. You have to acknowledge it. But that's not an excuse for not taking action. Okay, is Alex being unduly polite? The folks who I know say this: with the charter schools, the key to those that are successful, they're able to do some things that in essence flout union rules in regular situations, and that enables them to do things that you can't do in a regularly structured public school program. That's why they're able to excel. Is that overstating it? Is that unfair?
I think it's unfair. I don't think it's fair to really kind of nail down a charter school formula and make it so one-dimensional, honestly. I mean, it's not about charter schools having more latitude on policies around teachers. I mean, there's a whole host of things that have to do with the school culture, wraparound supports for kids that charter schools are able to do. And I can't think that Malloy in this decision to appoint Stephen Pryor is thinking, this is going to be about causing division. The only way forward here is to cause division. Or, we've got to think about one policy and kind of jamming it down everyone's throat. I mean, I think Stephen has fantastic experience coalition building, not consensus building, because consensus is not what we're looking for on all these issues, but coalition building to say, there's a way to get people involved. If you look at Hartford, for example, right, and a lot of people talk about a toxic relationship between district staff, district leadership, and the Hartford Teachers, Federation of Teachers, for example. There's still a whole lot of collaboration happening behind the scenes, a whole lot of it that has little to do right now with policy. Right, so there's a huge place for policy, but there's also an opportunity to bring people together and say, we'll get to your interests and how they conflict with ours when we talk about policy, but let's figure something out first. What's going to work for teachers and kids?
I think there's an opportunity. What if I say to you, Governor Malloy is indeed trying to shake it up? No question, bringing in a guy with no teaching background, he's not an education bureaucrat, that he is indeed trying to create a little bit of creative tension in order to create change.
I think so. I mean, I think he's going to force people to come to the table.
And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think, though, that the point to be emphasized is that it's not about a singular approach. And so speaking of this only in the frame of the opportunity for charter schools misses even the point of why so many of us have been advocating that we need them. We need them as an option. And we can't ever get to a place where we become so wed to one option that we miss the purpose. If for some reason in 10 years charter schools weren't doing it, and we still were straddled with an achievement gap, we would need to talk about a different vehicle for getting it done.
But again, it's not charter schools per se. I hear what you guys are saying loud and clear. It's not charter schools per se, but the elements that make successful schools,
look,
right?
I mean, you want to talk about a thorny problem. It's how we pay for public education.
Okay. Well, let me do one thing. We have 2 minutes left. You guys give me 2 or 3 things that you can agree on right now. Forget charter schools, forget public schools. 3 things that have to happen to create change.
All right, well, we're going to see if we agree on it, but I'll lay them out. I think we have to tackle our school funding system. It is a huge obstacle, and people don't think about it, but it's behind everything that we're doing.
Explain quickly what that means.
We need to have money follow every student to every public school in the state based on the learning needs of that child.
So if this
and right now, we do the exact
Bloomfield
opposite.
wants to go to Simsbury, he needs to follow him or her.
And it just doesn't work that way right now, and it's a fundamental constraint on innovation and change that we desperately need.
30 seconds, bullet point.
We need to completely reframe how we're talking about sort of the moral imperative for why we make these changes. And I think that, yes, school finance reform needs to happen, but it's because parents deserve to have high-quality options. And the only way that you create those opportunities for them to choose where their child is educated and to make sure that those schools that don't work don't continue to get funded and the ones that do are able to be sustained is why you do it. So
accountability and reward, you're saying.
We've got to frame the issue in a way that really allows us to situate parents, community members as the decision makers.
Paul, bullet point.
Bullet point, I just think a commitment to closing underperforming schools. Just straight up a commitment to saying this has not been working. We're not going to try to Band-Aid it and say, you know what, this community, you can deal with another 5 or 10 years. Let us fix the problem over time. Absolutely not. We've got to commit to say we need a full transformation of a school that's not working and let the parents, the consumers, the students know that we are committed to you, your future right now.
Okay. All very exciting options. In about 10 seconds, if you only focused on closing bad schools, could everybody get some things done? You have the financial issues, you have accountability. If the new commissioner say, you know what, all we're going to do right now is focus on closing bad schools and rewarding the ones that are performing, would that go a long way?
That would help, but you actually have to do them both at the same time. You have to create new schools even before you're ready to close, and you also have to work with schools that do need to be improved.
Okay, Alex Johnson, Danielle Smith, Paul Holzer, enjoyed having you guys in. We'll have you in again because this is not going anywhere, so we'll continue our conversation. Thanks you very
Stan.
much.
Thank you, Stan.
All right, when we come back, folks, we'll talk about Governor Dan Malloy's leadership style as it takes shape 8 months into his new job. Christine Stewart of CTNewsJunkie.com. Join us. Remember, catch our show 24/7, CTNow.com/Stan. Friend us on Facebook, Twitter, too.